This is my Quebec City, your stories. Hey, Dollar Des Ormeaux school gang. Guess what happened? I ended up in the vice principal's office. Yep, had a meeting with Mr. Keats. But I'm not in trouble. No, actually, it was a pretty good chat with the man otherwise known as Nick, an Atlantic Canadian who's now had really a lifetime of learning here in Quebec, both as an educator and an educatee, which, yes, is a word. I just looked it up because I wasn't sure. Lifelong learning. So, Nick, what's your story?
I'm originally from Newfoundland and Labrador. Been in Quebec City since 1995. Thought it was going to be 10 months, but it's been 30 years now.
You became a teacher, been in Shannon for a long time in fact, but you started in Quebec as a student.
I started this whole journey in Three Rivers in grade 11, which would have been 1994, where I had won one of those bursaries, a 6-week learn French. I thought I'd be bilingual after 6 weeks, so I realized 30 years later I'm still not perfectly bilingual. From there, I didn't really know what I wanted to do in the future, so I applied to go back to Three Rivers, actually at Trois-Rivières. The university there, you needed Cégep, but at Université Laval, there was a program for immersion. I took that, and quite the story actually to how I got to Quebec. My idea was I thought I'd learned so much in Three Rivers in 6 weeks in the summer that I'm like, wow, if I can do 10 months, I'll be set. Kind of thought maybe going back to Newfoundland and Labrador and work national parks or something where bilingualism was important. I like to talk, so I'm doing a podcast with you. So it took me a year and a half of university to finish. So that was December. Then I started my program, which was my degree, my undergrad. And once I'd started it, well, I wanted to finish. So that went well. Finished in December. And because I was working on the ferries from Newfoundland and Labrador, from Cape Breton, financially I was okay, I guess. And I decided to rent a room instead of staying in residence. And when I rented the room, I was like Jack Tripper for your older audience here. So I was living with 3 girls, and one of them has been my wife for 20-something years.
Love came and knocked on your door. So you finished school, went back to Newfoundland, but ultimately came back to Quebec.
Yeah, so then I decided, what am I going to do in Newfoundland? It was December, and I had started teaching English as a second language to adults, and I knew I could make ends meet and give it a shot with Isabel, with my wife. Well, she became my wife, and so we came back. I started working odds and end jobs, teaching English at night, and finally I got a position. I had a job interview for a military base, so teaching with a little more consistent contracts, teaching the Canadian Forces, and I stayed there from 2001 until 2012. Then there were some cuts. I was 35 years old and I was getting frustrated, and contract work, that was enough. So I decided to go back to university. So I went back to Newfoundland and Labrador for a full year. My wife stayed here. I was like a military, I guess, that I was on IR and my wife was here with our daughter full calendar year to do my bachelor's of education, because I already have my degree and a teaching certificate, but I didn't have my BEd. From there, it's where I discovered Quebec City has an English community, believe it or not, in 2012, because most of my friends had been former military or people. I played a lot of volleyball, different associations, neighbors, but I lived in French here in Quebec City. Then I needed a work term because I didn't want to be in Newfoundland and Labrador for the winter when I could be here with my family. And I found QHS, Quebec High School, had a principal, Mr. Thompson, and I'm like, I know him, Mr. Thompson. We went to university together. And finally, through different contacts through Facebook, I was able to reach out and I got a work term there. So that's how I started the journey in CQSB. After my work term, went really well, really enjoyed QHS, but no opportunities there for me as I taught English and social studies at the beginning. They had more math and science. So I got a call for DDO and I've been here ever since. So the first 5.5 years as a teacher and the last 6 as an administrator, vice principal, mostly in high school. And this year I've taken on a little bit of the elementary school as well.
French classes are of course mandatory throughout the country, but are English language schools in Quebec different at all from their counterparts in the rest of Canada?
Maybe not the rest of Canada. We certainly differ from the big French schools here. For example, just the size. In our high school, part of our school, we're a K4 to Sec 5 school at DDO, but in high school right now, we have 150 students. Even at 150, you can imagine it's a very small community. I grew up in a village, a little village mentality, which we really like. Even our big high schools, St. Pat's and QHS, are really, really small compared to the Francophone schools. More than 90% of our students are military students, so they're perfectly bilingual. You can hear them speaking French in the hallways, or English, or mixed, half French, half English. So it's very interesting. We have great kids that are very open, and they've moved a lot. So we can have up to as many as 30% turnover every year with postings in and postings out. So our students are very welcoming. We're like a big community.
What advice do you have for parents who want to send their kids to DDO or any English school here, really, but maybe aren't sure if they can, exactly how the process goes, stuff like that?
Call Miss Stephanie, our secretary. So basically we have one of our administrative assistants, and that's what she's doing right now, because there are two statuses. There's a permanent status, which my daughter, for example, has a permanent status because I did my elementary school in English. So she has a permanent status for all of her life, and her kids will too now. But for military, it's 2 or 3 years, the status they have, and it has to be renewed. And unfortunately for some of our students, we've had cases where students have studied in English from kindergarten to Sec 1, Sec 2, Sec 3, and then their parents leave the forces and they're forced to go to French school even though they've been in school for so long. There are a few loopholes and there are rules and regulations around it, but that's the only reason we can have an English high school here.
Okay, as an East Coast guy, I gotta ask, is there a Quebec equivalent to getting screeched in Newfoundland and Labrador?
Wow. I'm thinking about poutine right away, but there's no alcohol involved. There's no long may your big jib draw or any sayings that you have to say or things you have to eat. Not to my knowledge, but I'm Newfoundlander in Quebec, so that would be a better question for a Quebecer.